not a good day for John Stumpf. Charlie Gasparino has been following it here. I should take a peek at the stock right now. While nominally up, remember, this has fallen about 10% in just the past month or so. But, Charlie, wow.
Yeah, a bipartisan ass-kicking that I haven't seen in a long time.
It didn't start out that way. You thought, like, let's get through this.
It started out slow.
It got heated.
And you knew it would be. Listen, I remember when Jamie Dimon had to go before this committee, or one of the committees, or many committees, a couple years ago when they had the London whale trading fiasco. He handled them pretty well. He was incredibly prepared for that. John Stumpf, in contrast, wasn't. I mean, listen, he's the CEO of the company, chairman of the board. Of course he knows about compensation. That's all they do all day is figure out how to compensate their senior executives. 60% of all bank of all their revenues go to compensation. So of course they sit there and they look at compensation. So that's BS. The notion
is that a lie? Is that criminal?
I don't know if it's criminal or not because I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to quote John Stumpf there, but you know, the notion that
maybe it would have helped if he were.
Yeah, maybe if it would have helped if he was briefed by a lawyer. So the question is coming in, and this is something that we reported last week, that sources close to the bank said a lot of his future, particularly long-term future, I think he's going to last a week because he has to do another, or last a month because he has to do another hearing, by the way, depends on how well he does at these hearings, and he's not doing very well. And you got to put you got to say right now, and I was dubious at first, that the net he's probably going to have to resign before his retirement, which is, I hear, in a couple of years. That's one thing. The other thing I would say is this. Okay, why do banks, particularly like Wells Fargo, which is, just so you know, a very well-run bank, which hurts them in this regard because they're so focused on profits and cross-selling, why do they cross-sell retail banking products? Well, here's what happened, and what Elizabeth Warren failed.
Apparently encouraged to do so.
Yeah, why do they do that? Why do they have to do that? Because after Dodd-Frank, the feds, the federal government, forced them to get out of many profitable lines of business that had nothing to do with the financial crisis. It was considered too risky, even though it had zero to do with it, including trading, including hedge funds, all these very profitable lines of business. So what did the big banks like Wells and JP Morgan, all these other banks, they went in and they had to ramp up fees on another side to make their profit margins. And that's what we have here. I'm not exonerating him. I'm not passing a buck. I am telling you, if you want the root cause of why there's all this cross-selling on the retail side, by the way, all you have to do is go to a JP Morgan branch and say you lost your credit card. You'll be harangued for 20 minutes by someone trying to sell you 14 different products of JP Morgan.
Well, you just read my mind about the next question. I mean, we're putting this guy under the microscope. Are there other banks that probably did the same thing, or maybe not on a grander scale?
I seem to.
This guy was actually bragging about it to Elizabeth Warren's credit in conference calls with analysts years ago.
Right, and I thought she did a very good job, except for that one point, which she'll never like concede that Dodd-Frank is the root cause of this, because every bank does a certain degree of this. Now, here's why I think they're worse.
Just like Congress encouraged banks to hand out mortgages like lollipops.
Absolutely.
And obviously banks left to their own devices. And we'll find a way to put that on steroids.
And here's something else that you won't say. Because of Dodd-Frank, you have 8 or 6, or I can't remember the exact number, really big banks. They're unmanageable, okay? What Congress did was they passed this law. They put all these alleged risk controls on them, right? By the way, cross-selling is not one of the risk controls that they put on. You could still cross-sell until today, maybe. And they left them really big, and you know they're impossible to manage. I had this conversation with Jamie Dimon after the London whale thing, where I said, listen, he says, Charlie, we didn't do anything fraudulent. This was a mistake, a screw up. We really screwed up. I said, I believe you, Jamie, but here's where you and I differ. You guys are too big. You can't manage that place. Nobody can manage think about what a bank is now. It's not just a bank with commercial deposits and doing regular banking stuff. It's a securities firm. It does all this other stuff.
Don't you worry that this is, for this bank and other banks, it's like the Richard Nixon moment with David Frost. I gave them a sword. This guy gave them a sword. This guy gave them a reason to re-legislate, to re-litigate, to drag still more CEOs before Congress, because it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not apologizing for anything he did. I'm saying
I agree. It depends on who gets elected. If Donald Trump gets elected, my guess is, because I hear this just through the grapevine, that he wants less regulation and a possibly breakup of the bank. He believes that they should be smaller and better run.
Well, what about this consumer unit, that
Consumer Financial Protection Board?
Praises. She claims that was the reason this came to light. Is that true?
Well, they're the one that prosecuted the first case, or litigated it. It wasn't quite a prosecution. It was a civil.
So is she right? Without that that unit, it would never
She's
would happen.
listen, she's right on a lot of stuff. Where she fails, where she doesn't understand the bank is why we have banks so aggressive in cross-selling and why management can't find it. It all goes back to the laws that she likes. Dodd-Frank made it impossible for them to do other stuff